Hello, my fellow readers. I, Dark Symphony 777, with another fanfiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, and leave a comment section below on your thoughts on the story. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, story I am doing a review of this today is Seeing Red by... I think this chair is really squeaky. I need to get it replaced. By Ryoshi Morino. It is a Naruto fanfiction, and this is a story I honestly have been wanting to read for a while. I actually completely forgot to add it into the full list, because it's not really that long. It's only like about 150,000 words. But I've been wanting to read it for a little while, but I kept forgetting to add it to the list. So I thought, I might as well, because now, as of this recording, I'm now partway through Dynamic Equilibrium, which is the really big story that I've been wanting to read for a while. I'm already on like chapter 12 of the 43 chapter story. It's really long, still going through it. But this is more just a buffer thing. No offense to the author, but I don't have a filter. I blame that. I blame my mind. But anyway, Seeing Red is first impressions are, it starts off good, but then it kind of peters out into average. So, what is the story about? Well, let's start with the plot. So, in order to get a good grasp on what the plot is, we have to discuss actual parts of the actual manga/anime. So there is a small arc that's set before the events of the time skip into Shippuden called the Sasuke retrieval arc. And what that arc entails is Orochimaru sends a group of about 5 people called the Sound Elite to go grab Sasuke and bring him to Orochimaru so Sasuke can train to try and kill Itachi. Tsunade entrusts Naruto and a bunch of other Genins to try and capture Sasuke and go up. One of the characters of the Sound 4 is a girl by the name of Teyuya, who is basically a Konichi, who uses a flute to control these Onis to attack people. So she's basically a very psychological character. She does a lot of stuff like that. And she actually manages to square off against Shikamaru. They kind of end in a stalemate. Tamari shows up, does Tamari things, and basically in the manga/anime, kills her by collapsing in the forest, and the implication that she basically crushed her. Like, Teyuya died by being crushed to death by the gigantic trees. And that's actually where the story starts. It's the start of the time skip. Naruto and Jiraiya, they leave Konoha. Jiraiya notices a bunch of vultures flying around a certain specific spot in the forest. Jiraiya's like thinking out of it. It's like, I have some time. And he goes to find out where the crows are, and he comes across Teyuya still alive. Now again, in the manga anime, the implication is that Teyuya basically died from being crushed to death. In this story, it just crushes her legs. Jiraiya sees her, offers her a deal, said, I will get you out of these trees if you help us find Orochimaru, if you give us information about Orochimaru, his bases, all that sort of stuff. And Teyuya's like, fine, I'll help you. Just let me at him as well, if you can. It's like, deal, but I'm gonna train you. And so basically, Jiraiya basically saves Teyuya, heals her up, and starts training her along with Naruto. So the story takes place over the course of the 3-year time skip in the anime, again, between the original series and Shippuden. And it has Jiraiya, Naruto, Teyuya, and then eventually a character named Ranmaru, a character named Sasami, and another character I literally can't remember. Sora, there it is. Sora, and they become a team. I'm paraphrasing the plot. They train together. the Kyuubi Kurama basically says, "Oh, you like her, ha ha ha," and there's some nudity, slight nudity and stuff like that. Naruto and Kyu, kind of start crushing on each other. Jiraiya's like, and stuff like that. There's a bunch of stuff that happens involving the other nations. Killer Bee gets involved. Naruto finds out how to combine different jutsus to create like the artifice to actually kind of homebrew the Gekais we see over the course of the Naruto series. I completely don't know. I literally know jack shit about Naruto Shippuden, outside of like there's like a character named Itachi and Kisame, and he has like a sword, and there's a guy who has like mouse in his hand, and he makes like paper mache bombs and stuff like that, and that's really all I know. That's really all I know of Shippuden. Oh, and apparently there's like one fight that's like was notorious for like having bad animation. I don't even know what fight that was. I just hear people talk about how bad the animation is for being just so bad. I actually wish I knew what that fight was, to be honest. But anyway. But that's more or less the plot. It's just they basically wander around doing Naruto and Teyuya's training, and eventually the other three characters training as well. That's fine. They go off. They do Naruto things, like they act very Naruto-ish in terms of just being kooky and kind of serious, but kooky, typical shonen stuff, like at the same time. They do a lot. I think some stuff is actually restricted from in the movies. Like some stuff in the movies are mentioned here. They get hunted. They get attacked. They train. Teyuya basically gets a Kitsune contract, which doesn't really go. I want to mention that first. The author makes writes a part of in story like, oh, Teyuya is the first person to ever get a Kitsune contract. Basically they're just basically not Biju versions of the Kyuubi and stuff like that, but the author never uses it. It's like you made a contract, like cunning and stuff like that, but you never use that contract. It's just weird. And that honestly comes from, I think, my only real complaint about the story, in terms of a plot point, is the ending itself. It honestly feels completely sudden and cut off. Like, the author wanted, I'm completely guessing, the author wanted to write more of this, but either kind of burned out on the idea, which is understandable, or he just really couldn't figure out how to continue the story, which is understandable, because he does like a lot of stuff that happens that kind of changes the course of the events of Shippuden, like the Akatsuki. They added new members. Since Itachi left, and they're actually switching up their plans. That's except for I think like the Gaara stuff with like the with the guy with the hands and another guy named Sasori. I think that's actually how to pronounce his name. And stuff like that. Naruto becomes a Junin. He has like a team with Sasami, Sora, and Ranmaru. He has like Zabuza's sword and like another twin swords, and Teyuya has like all this stuff, and is basically very physically strong and stuff like that. And also Naruto and Teyuya get married. There's a lot of stuff that comes off as very half finished, like, which kind of supports the idea that the author just more than likely just couldn't figure out how to continue the story and just ended it there at the end of the time skip, because at the beginning the author did say the story was going to end at the time skip. So I'm guessing he can't. Like I said, it came off like the author wanted to continue the idea, which is fine, but he just couldn't figure out how to continue it. He just said, you know what, I told myself the story was going to end at the beginning of Shippuden. Wash my hands of it. Which is understandable. Like, you made a promise, you want to fulfill that promise, despite the fact it kind of comes off, in a weird sort of way, but I can't blame you for that. But in terms of plot, in terms of the overall arching plot, it's very plain. And how I'm saying that is the simple fact that this seems to be a thing with Naruto fanfictions in particular. Like, as far as I know, this doesn't really happen in any other big name anime stuff like that. This specifically just happens in Naruto fanfiction, where the author has like a habit of changing one event and then reshaping it like this. I think it does happen in One Piece too, but that's more like a Peggy Sue sort of thing, where like characters from the future, they kind of end up going to the past and then changing the past and then changing the events that way. But this one is just, here's a set point in time, here's adding or changing something and just having that play out that way. Which is basically what happened. Instead of Naruto and Jiraiya going on the time skip themselves, they're joined by Tayuya, and then they're eventually joined by Ranmaru, Sora, Sasami, sometimes Neji, and stuff like that. And Naruto also learns like sealing stuff. Like he finds out early who his parents were. Jiraiya was like under a gag, like who are my parents? It was like I'm under a gag where I'll ask Tsunade, but we'll have to wait. It's like, all right. I still get to punch you, so yeah, you can punch me. But yeah. But there's a lot of neat stuff, but also kind of samey problems with a lot of these types of Naruto fanfiction. They kind of fall into very samey tropes. Like, it's part of the reason why I think the last time I did a Naruto fanfiction was that harem fic, that comedy harem fic. And I mentioned a lot of harem fics kind of go the same way, to the point where it's actually got to the point where you kind of read one harem fic, you kind of read them all, because they all end up the same way, and they just get very repetitive and stuff like that. And it's like that's why I liked Naruto Mysterious Power, because it actually went out of its way to do something different with the idea of just instead of Naruto overpowered, Naruto emo, smart Naruto, it's just Naruto goofing up and Naruto acting like Naruto, and like all the girls just fall in love with him because he literally just acts like Naruto, which I'm like, that was just a goddamn refreshing change. It's like, yes. But yeah, my only complaint about the plot is the ending. I get why the author cut it off. Like I said, the story was going to end at the time skip. Honestly, it still, even if that was the intention, it still very much comes off like you still had a bunch of ideas that you still wanted to do, but just didn't want to do the idea anymore. Which is, that happens. Like, I could think of a million authors who just basically, they lose interest in an idea and then they just move on. It happens. It's a common occurrence with writers and stuff like that. So I can't. So not really a criticism, just something pointing out. Characters. We're only going to talk about Tayuya and Naruto, mainly because they're the main two, and I would be it would take way too long to just talk about all the characters, because the story structure of how the plot progresses is really weird. In the fact that Naruto, Tayuya, and Jiraiya, they technically go on these they're technically are kind of static. So let me explain. I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around, trying to work this best with my goddamn irritated eye. I don't know why my eyes act like this. So basically how the plot progresses is using the characters. So there's two groups of characters. There's Jiraiya's group, and then there's Tsunade's group. Well, Tsunade/Kakashi's group. Kakashi/Tsunade's group, they basically do something to basically move the plot for Jiraiya's group along. So, the whole thing with Killer Bee and the stuff with Ranmaru. That starts when Jiraiya asks Tsunade to give him a mission to continue, so that way he can train Naruto. So Tsunade gives him the mission to basically stop the guy with the two swords from possibly murdering anyone. Like there's a mission, like that's the mission. It's like there's a lot of deaths going on, and they're sent to investigate. So it's basically Tsunade / Kakashi / any of them do something to move Jiraiya's group along in the plot. So it's a very interesting dynamic of how to do things. It's not rare. Like I've seen this idea before. It's just not exactly really common. Like it's very atypical. So, you know. But yeah, in terms of actual characters, Naruto basically just acts like Naruto. Like if there's one blank character, it's Naruto. Like mainly because I've seen so many Naruto stories kind of go the same way, and that Naruto starts being serious like immediately, and it's like the harem thing. Like once you've seen one Naruto, you kind of seen them all in terms of fan fiction. Where where Naruto he starts off as Naruto at the beginning of the story, but then as the story goes along, he gets like super serious because he wants to protect Tayuya, and then he fake kills himself under Jiraiya's guidance because he was worried that another nation was constantly hunting him, and he didn't want to put his friends in danger. That's admirable. And then he goes incognito. Because the whole thing near the end of the time skip, so that way he can start, he can try and keep himself hidden, but he can't do that because he wants to be with Tayuya, and then they meet each other at like I don't even remember where because it's just so insignificant, and it just comes at the end of the story, so I'm just like something with a demon or something, and then they tie the knot, and then they have the sex. And that's it. And then, Naruto reveals himself like, I'm still alive the entire time. I was like, hey! And then Naruto's like, hey! And then Jiro's like, don't hit me! I'm kidding, that's not actually what happened, but I'm just exaggerating. But yeah, Naruto is fine. Yeah, he's bland, but in the context of the story, he functionally works. And even then, it's like, yeah, he's outstanding, but nothing really standing out or doing anything creative, different and unique in the context of the story that makes him stand out. He just acts like Naruto, just being super serious and wanting to protect his friends, and then getting pissed off that Jiraiya making him protect his friends by pretending to kill himself for a couple years to train and stuff like that. And then we have Tayuya. Personally, I don't like Tayuya. Tayuya is one of those characters that is kind of made for fanfiction. I'm actually surprised there's not really more Tayuya fanfictions out there. Mainly on the grounds is Tayuya is just such an insignificant character in the manga / anime that she doesn't really have much of a way of personality. Yeah, we see her meet with Sasuke, and then she fights Shikamaru, but that's really all we see her. I think maybe she comes back. It's shonen anime. There's always one point where dead characters come back at some point. If Dragon Ball Z taught us anything, that happens in every shonen anime, right? Right? Oh, now I'm done with myself. I don't even know. But anyway, what we know about Tayuya in the manga / anime is she's brash, she has a mouth, and I mean mouth as in a potty mouth. She curses, and apparently in the manga she spends every single sentence cursing her brains out. And that's really good. For the most part, Tayuya is basically a blank slate, so you can do whatever you want with her. I just find it very off-putting that the author starts with her being, very acting like Tayuya, being brash, confrontational, having a big old mouth on her, constantly cursing. It's a running thing in a couple Tayuya fanfictions that Teiuya always calls Naruto shithead. Why that name? I don't know. He just does it. But yeah, it's just it works, but then the author completely like changes her character like drastically, making her very demure, like kind of making her kind of like a combination between Sakura and Hinata. I mean, in the context, it works because when we see this change, there's a time skip of a couple weeks. I think either a weeks or months happening, so it's plenty of time for Teiuya, the character, to change. I just personally don't like it. Again, just like with Naruto, I personally like with Naruto. I just found him bland. With Teiuya, I actually don't like her character, but in the context of the story, just like Naruto, she works. Like she's functional. She's fine for what she is. She's fine for her role in the story, and for that, can't really complain. The whole point of a critic is you're supposed to judge things unbiasedly. So yeah, it's just like if I put any bias in, I would just say I don't like Teiuya's character, but unbiasedly, she functionally fits and works in the context of this story specifically. If she was in like some other, like maybe if she was in like a romance, that would actually work completely offhandedly, because that just honestly just come off as like bad character development if it was a pure romance. But this is, I believe, where is it? I do not have it. Okay, scene. Hold on one time. Scene red. I think this is a romance romance in romance adventures. So yeah, if this was a pure romance, then I would say that this wouldn't make sense. But since it's also an adventure story, and a point in several chapters, and there's like gaps in the timeline, so it, again, it's fine. It's functional for what it is, but it's fine. So let's see what's next. Pacing. The story is paced very fast, which is a double-edged sword. I can see people complaining about it's way too fast-paced for what it's trying to do. I honestly think it's fine. And nothing completely over the top. Like, if it was faster, then yeah, but when it tries to do something touching and emotional, then the story goes out, the author does write it so that the story to slow down a bit, but still keeps that very fast-paced feel about it. In essence, trying to write like a shonen anime sort of thing. Like, yeah, it's fine. Again, it's fine for what it's trying to do. It's fine for what it's trying to accomplish, and that's good. Grammar errors. I didn't see any grammar errors from what I remember. It's been a while. It's been a couple weeks since I read the story. I've actually been trying to I was actually turboing through some stories, and I mostly seeing read at work. So, okay, fine. I pretty much exclusively seeing read at work, where there was like no customers, because I have like a somewhat relaxing job where there's some days there's not really a lot going on, and I can take the time to read. So yeah, fine for what it is, in terms of everything from plot to characters to pacing to grammar error. Would I recommend the story? Actually, I still would. Like I said, it's an average story. I was expecting more, specifically from Teiuya, because I kind of like Teiuya's design, especially like her Oni look. Oni Teiuya. 10 out of 10. Yeah, it's just, there's some weird decisions that kind of make the story kind of weird, but again, all those minor things kind of flow into the ending, where it just felt like the author wanted to, like, the story kind of ends on the cliffhanger, like the author wanted to continue the story, but then just stopped it because reasons. But I would recommend the story. It's average across the board. Like it doesn't do anything horrible. Like the only thing that would personally bug me was the use of honorifics, but that's more of a cultural thing. Like like Naruto is a world based in like Japan, in like feudal Japan, so it makes sense that there be like all the characters being used like with honorifics like San and Kong and Oni-chan, like Oni-chan, Oni, One, sort of all that sort of thing. But it was but honestly, it was also kind of annoying. It makes sense in the context of the story, especially in the world. It was just also very annoying. But again, all the problems basically stem from the fact that the author wanted to do some kind of big payoff with them, but just ended the story too soon. For all I know, the story could have been having to go longer. I don't know much about the context behind the scenes of the story to really gauge it, but like I said, the story is just average along the board, along everything. Like it doesn't do anything really outstanding with the characters, but it doesn't do anything bad with the characters. Doesn't really do anything outstanding with the plot, but doesn't really do anything bad with the plot either. This is another story that's just there, and I think maybe if the story continued into Shippuden, who knows? Like the potential is there to do something more outstanding in terms of what might have been continuing on from this. But as it stands, it's average. I don't hate it. I wanted to like it. I desperately wanted to like it. But it was just, it didn't really capture it didn't really capture me as much as I wanted it to. I'm trying to perfectly word this as best I can. I really love the whole concept of Teyuya. I loved her character in the anime. I never really read the manga. I mainly just I did just a tiny little bit of research on her character because I actually liked her and I wanted to at least know a little bit more about her. But at the time when I did that, it was still like the beginning of Shippuden, so I didn't really know much about her outside of, oh, she's cute. I like her. And then I see her Oni look, it's like, oh my god, that's freaking gorgeous. I really love that design. But yeah, I wanted to like this. I really wanted to like the story, and that kind of hurts that I've kind of built especially the beginning, because the first couple of chapters, first 5, 6, 7, 8 chapters are really entertaining and have that Naruto feel to them, and then it just kind of peters out after that once they pick up Renmaru and all that. It kind of just becomes like standard fare with these types of stories, but doing nothing really to outstand them. It's just weird. Like and that's not even the weird like that's not even the worst of it. Like I wanted to see this whole dynamic between Anko and Kakashi, but there's not really enough. Like there's not enough time to really get to know Anko's character. Like she's sexually provocative. She's happy that the curse mark that Orochimaru was gone away. She gets married to Kakashi and has a kid, and Kakashi completely huh? Oh, we're having a kid. Wait, I'm fainting now. and the whole thing, it's just like I said, all the problems I would have with the story basically come off like the author they were going to be explored more later in the story, rather than being like, oh, here's something that I want to do, but I'm abandoning it because of reasons. But yeah, it's weird. It's just very weird. but I don't. But like I said, average across the board. Like I know I'm repeating myself at this point. Average across the board. There's nothing that's really outstanding about it, but I don't hate the story. I just think it's there. I really wanted to like it, but I couldn't get into it as much as I wanted it to. I will say this: the whole idea of like Kabuto kind of combining himself with Orochimaru, that's actually a really cool idea. I actually would want to see that specific idea explored more. Like, maybe make, like, an extra chapter just kind of going into, like, Kabuto's like, I must become my sensei, Orochimaru. And stuff like that. Yeah, that was a neat, I really like that idea. But other than that, I couldn't get into it because every time when something interesting happened, it was just dull. It never really went into the characters or had fun with the idea. I really did. And I really don't mean any insult to the author. I really wanted to like the story. I really did. And that actually hurts me more that I just couldn't get into the story. Because I just wouldn't. But yeah, is there any moment that really stands out? No. Like I said, I really want to like the story. I really did. I mean, maybe the whole joke with like Naruto doing like the nuclear shadow clone sexy jutsu on Jiraiya, and like Teiyu is like, there's no way he's gonna fall for something that dumb. And then Jiraiya goes, ladies! And they all crowd around him. It's like, that Marco's like, that what? And then kaboom. And it's like, you got me, Gaki. That was actually pretty funny. Mainly because it just fit the whole scenario. It's like, Naruto's like, aha, I know your weakness. And then she was like, there's no way he's gonna fall for something. And Jiraiya falls for it because he's Jiraiya. And then Teiu's like, nah. and then Jiraiya gets payback immediately. He's like, aha, wait. Why are these glowing? No! But yeah, while I would recommend it, it's just very average. There's nothing that stands out. And overall, I'm kind of left with a disappointed taste in my mouth because I psyched myself up so much of wanting to like the story, especially at the beginning, where the story wasn't really entertaining, and then it just became just dull and uninteresting. That hurt. That's just really kind of sad. But yeah, that's my review of Seeing Red. I know there wasn't much really to say, despite the fact the video's like over 30 minutes long. But I don't run on a script here. I just say what's in my mind because I honestly feel more realistic that way, and I just can't really work with a script. But anyway, this has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.